There's something deeply unsettling about driving alone at night. The endless stretch of asphalt, the darkness pressing in from all sides, and the knowledge that you're completely isolated, miles away from help. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true stories from people who experienced something terrifying on the highway. Stories that will make you think twice before taking that late-night drive. Let's begin. Story 1, The Follower. This story comes from a woman named Sarah, who was driving home from visiting her sister in another state. It was around 2 a.m., and she'd been on the road for about 4 hours already. She still had another hour to go. The highway was practically empty. Every 10 minutes or so, a car would pass going the opposite direction, headlights cutting through the darkness for just a moment before disappearing. But behind her, there was nothing. Just black emptiness in her rearview mirror. Sarah had her music playing softly, trying to stay alert. She'd had 2 energy drinks at a gas station an hour back, but the exhaustion was still creeping in. Her eyes felt heavy. The white lines on the road seemed to blur together. That's when she noticed the headlights. At first, they were just distant pinpoints of light, barely visible in her mirror. She didn't think much of it. Another driver, heading the same direction. Normal. But as the minutes passed, she realized something odd. The car behind her was maintaining the exact same distance. Not getting closer. Not falling back. Just there. She checked her speedometer. She was going about 75 miles per hour. Most people would either pass her or fall behind eventually. But this car stayed perfectly positioned, maybe 100 yards back. Sarah felt a small knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. She told herself she was being paranoid. Plenty of people use cruise control on long highway drives. It was probably nothing. To test it, she slowed down to 65. The car behind her slowed down too. Same distance. She sped up to 80. The car sped up, still maintaining that exact gap between them. Now her heart was starting to pound. She turned down her music, as if that would somehow help her think more clearly. The darkness outside her windows suddenly felt suffocating. She was surrounded by empty fields and forests. No houses. No towns. Just mile after mile of nothing. She considered exiting the highway, but the next exit wasn't for another 12 miles according to the sign she'd just passed. 12 miles. Could she make it 12 miles with this person following her? Sarah's hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white. She kept glancing between the road ahead and her rearview mirror. The headlights were still there. Unwavering. Constant. Then something changed. The car behind her suddenly accelerated. Fast. Within seconds, it was right on her bumper, headlights flooding her car with harsh white light. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her foot instinctively pressed harder on the gas pedal. 85. 90. 95. The car matched her speed, staying inches from her rear bumper. Sarah could barely see the road ahead because of the bright lights filling her car. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Tears were starting to blur her vision. "What do you want?" she whispered to herself, voice shaking. Then, just as suddenly, the car fell back again. Back to that same distance. 100 yards. Like nothing had happened. Sarah was hyperventilating now. She fumbled for her phone in the passenger seat, nearly swerving off the road. She needed to call 911. She needed help. But when she glanced down at her phone, her stomach dropped. No signal. She was in one of those dead zones that plague rural highways. 8 more miles to the exit. The sign flashed past her window. The car behind her did it again. Rushed up close, high beams blinding her, then fell back. This time it happened faster. Then again. And again. Each time, Sarah's panic grew. She was sobbing now, trying to keep the car steady, trying not to crash. 5 miles to the exit. Sarah made a decision. When she reached the exit, she would run the stop sign at the top of the ramp. She wouldn't stop for anything. She'd drive straight to the nearest gas station or police station, even if she had to run every red light to get there. 3 miles. The car rushed up again. This time, it bumped her. Just a light tap, but enough to make her car jerk forward. Sarah screamed. The car fell back. 1 mile. She saw the exit sign illuminated in her headlights. She put on her turn signal out of pure habit, which seemed insane given the circumstances. As she took the exit ramp, she watched her mirror with terror, expecting the car to follow. But it didn't. The headlights stayed on the highway, maintaining their speed, and disappeared into the distance. Sarah sat at the top of the exit ramp, engine running, hands shaking uncontrollably. She waited for 5 full minutes, watching to see if the car would circle back. It never did. When she finally calmed down enough to drive, she made it to a gas station just 2 miles down the road. She called the police. They took a report, but without a license plate number or description of the vehicle beyond dark-colored sedan with bright headlights, there wasn't much they could do. The officer told her something that made her blood run cold. There had been 3 other reports in the past 6 months. 3 other women, driving alone at night on that same stretch of highway. All describing the same thing. A car that followed them, got close, then disappeared at an exit. Sarah never took that highway again. She drives 2 hours out of her way now when visiting her sister, because she knows whoever was driving that car is still out there, still following people, still playing their sick game. And someday, they might not let their victim reach the exit. Story 2. The Rest Stop. This next story comes from a truck driver named Mike. He'd been hauling freight across the country for 15 years. He'd seen a lot of weird things on the road. Stranded motorists, strange hitchhikers, animals where they shouldn't be. But nothing prepared him for what happened at a rest stop in Nevada. It was around 3 a.m. Mike had been driving for 9 hours and needed to take his mandatory rest break. He was on a particularly desolate stretch of highway, the kind where you don't see another car for 30 or 40 miles at a time. The landscape was just flat desert, barely visible in the darkness. He saw the sign for a rest stop coming up in 2 miles. It wasn't much, according to the sign. Just parking, restrooms, and vending machines. But it was enough. He needed to stretch his legs and use the bathroom. When Mike pulled into the rest stop, his headlights swept across the parking area. There were 3 other vehicles there. 2 cars and another semi-truck, parked at the far end of the lot. The rest stop itself was just a small brick building with dim lights above the bathroom doors. Mike parked his rig, grabbed his flashlight out of habit, and climbed down from the cab. The night air was cool and still, completely silent except for the ticking of his engine as it cooled down. The fluorescent lights above the building flickered occasionally, casting weird shadows. He walked toward the bathroom, noticing that the other semi had its lights off and curtains drawn in the cab. The driver was probably sleeping. The 2 cars were empty as far as he could tell. Maybe their drivers were inside using the facilities. Mike pushed open the door to the men's restroom. The motion sensor light took a moment to flicker on, bathing the small room in harsh white light. It was a typical rest stop bathroom. 3 stalls, 2 urinals, a sink with a mirror. Dirty tile floor. The faint smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with something less pleasant. He was standing at the urinal when he heard it. A sound coming from one of the stalls behind him. A wet, dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. Mike glanced over his shoulder but didn't see anything. The stall doors were all closed. He figured it was just the old plumbing making noise. These rest stops were always falling apart. Then he heard it again. Closer this time. And with it, a soft breathing sound. Raspy and uneven. "Hello," Mike called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "Someone in here?" No response. Just that breathing. In and out. In and out. Mike quickly finished and went to the sink to wash his hands. As he ran the water, he watched the mirror, looking at the reflection of the stalls behind him. The door to the middle stall was slightly ajar. He was sure it had been closed a moment ago. The breathing sound continued. It was definitely coming from that middle stall. "Look, buddy, you okay?" Mike asked, louder now. "You need help or something?" The breathing stopped. Complete silence. The only sound was the water running in the sink. Mike turned off the faucet. In the sudden quiet, he could hear his own heartbeat. Something felt very wrong. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to leave. Just walk out. Get back in his truck and drive away. But he didn't. Maybe it was his trucker sense of camaraderie. Maybe it was just curiosity. He took a step toward the middle stall. "I'm gonna check on you, all right?" he said. He pushed the stall door open slowly. It creaked on rusty hinges. The stall was empty. Nothing there but a dirty toilet and cracked tile walls. But on the floor, there was something that made Mike's breath catch. Wet footprints, leading from the toilet to the stall door. Not water. Something darker. They were fresh, glistening in the fluorescent light. Mike backed away, his boots nearly slipping on the wet floor. That's when he heard the breathing again. Right behind him. He spun around. The other two stall doors were still closed. But now he could see it. Under the gap at the bottom of the left stall, there were feet. Bare feet. Pale and wet, with long, cracked toenails. They were facing the wrong direction. Facing the wall instead of the toilet. "Jesus Christ," Mike whispered. The feet shifted. Slowly, they began to turn. Rotating in place with a soft, wet sliding sound. First pointing sideways. Then toward the door. Then toward Mike. Mike didn't wait to see more. He ran. Slammed through the bathroom door and sprinted across the parking lot to his truck. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely get his keys out. He kept looking back at the bathroom, expecting to see something coming after him. The door remained closed. The rest stop was silent and still. Mike started his engine and pulled out of the parking lot faster than he should have. He didn't care about his rest break anymore. He didn't care that he was violating his drive time logs. He just needed to get away from that place. As he merged back onto the highway, he looked in his side mirror one last time. The rest stop was shrinking in the distance. The lights flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. Mike drove for 3 more hours before he felt safe enough to stop again. When he did, he was at a busy truck stop with dozens of other vehicles and bright lights everywhere. He filed a report with the Nevada Highway Patrol, telling them something wasn't right at that rest stop. They sent a patrol car to check it out. The officer found nothing unusual. Empty bathroom. No wet footprints. No sign that anyone had been there recently. The officer suggested that Mike had been overtired. That maybe he'd dozed off for a moment and dreamed the whole thing. But Mike knows what he saw. He knows what he heard. And he's never stopped at an isolated rest stop at night again. He doesn't care how badly he needs a break. It's not worth the risk. Because something was in that bathroom with him. Something that wasn't human. And it's probably still there, waiting in the dark for the next person to walk through that door. Story 3. The Hitchhiker. The final story comes from a man named David. This happened to him about 6 years ago, and he says he still has nightmares about it. David was driving home from a business conference in Portland, heading south on Interstate 5. It was late October, and the weather had turned bad. Heavy rain, the kind that makes it hard to see even with your wipers on full speed. The road was slick and treacherous. It was around midnight when David saw her. A woman standing on the side of the highway, thumb out, completely soaked from the rain. She was wearing a light jacket and jeans, no umbrella, no bags. Just standing there in the downpour. David's first instinct was to drive past. He'd heard all the stories about picking up hitchhikers. It was dangerous. You never knew who you were letting into your car. But something made him slow down. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the fact that she looked so miserable and desperate. He couldn't just leave someone stranded in a storm like this. He pulled over onto the shoulder about 20 yards ahead of her. Through his rearview mirror, he watched her run toward his car. She was young, maybe early 20s, with long dark hair plastered to her face. She yanked open the passenger door and climbed in, bringing a rush of cold air and rain with her. "Oh my God, thank you," she gasped, shivering. "Thank you so much. I've been out there for over an hour." "What happened?" David asked, pulling back onto the highway. "Car breakdown." "Yeah," she said, wiping rain from her face. "It just died. I tried calling for help, but my phone is dead. I didn't know what else to do." David nodded. "Where you headed?" "Salem," she said. "If you could just drop me anywhere near there, I can figure out the rest." Salem was about 40 miles south. right on David's route. "I can take you all the way," he offered. "No problem." "You're a lifesaver," she said, and gave him a small smile. For the first few miles, they didn't talk much. David kept his eyes on the road. The rain was relentless, and visibility was terrible. The woman sat quietly in the passenger seat, arms wrapped around herself, still shivering. Then David noticed something odd. The woman wasn't dripping anymore. He'd expected her to leave a puddle on his car seat. Her clothes had been absolutely drenched when she got in. But now, when he glanced over at her, she looked almost dry. Her hair, her jacket, everything. "Feeling warmer?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," she said. But she didn't elaborate. Another few miles passed. David's unease was growing. Something felt off about this situation, but he couldn't pinpoint what. He turned up the heat in the car, trying to focus on the road. "What were you doing out here so late?" he asked, trying to make conversation. "Driving home from a friend's place," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Must have been scary, being stranded like that. "Yeah," she said again. No detail. No emotion. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. In his peripheral vision, he could see her sitting completely still. Not fidgeting. Not looking around. Just staring straight ahead at the road. "So where exactly did your car break down?" he asked. "We should call a tow truck for you." For the first time, she turned her head to look at him. Her eyes caught the light from the dashboard. They seemed to reflect it in a strange way. Almost like an animal's eyes. "Don't worry about it," she said. The temperature in the car suddenly felt colder despite the heat being on full blast. David's breath caught in his throat. He reached over to adjust the temperature controls, and that's when he saw it. The woman cast no reflection in the passenger side window. His heart stopped. He could see the rain streaking down the glass. He could see the darkness outside. But where her reflection should have been, there was nothing. David's mind was racing. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. But when he looked directly at her, she was solid. Physical. Sitting right there next to him. "Something wrong?" she asked. Her voice had changed. It was deeper now. Colder. "No," David lied, trying to keep his voice steady. "All good." But it wasn't good. Nothing about this was good. David's eyes flicked to the odometer. Still 25 miles to Salem. 25 miles with whatever this thing was sitting next to him. He couldn't pull over. Couldn't risk what might happen if he stopped the car. His only option was to keep driving. Act normal. Get to Salem where there would be lights and people. "You're scared," the woman said. It wasn't a question. David didn't respond. His throat was too tight to speak. "You should be," she continued. "Most people don't stop. Most people drive right past. But you stopped. You let me in." "I was trying to help," David managed to say. "I know," she said. "That's the sad part." The car fell into silence. The only sounds were the rain hammering on the roof and the rhythm of the windshield wipers. David could feel her watching him. Could sense her presence like a cold weight in the seat beside him. 20 miles to Salem. "Do you believe in ghosts, David?" she asked. His blood ran cold. He hadn't told her his name. "How do you?" "Your wallet," she said, pointing to the console between them. "I can see your driver's license through the clear part." That made sense. That was logical. But David didn't believe it for a second. 15 miles to Salem. "I died on this highway," she said suddenly. 3 years ago. October 28th. It was raining, just like tonight. My car spun out. I hit the barrier and went over the edge. Rolled 4 times down the embankment. They didn't find my body for 2 days. David's hands were shaking on the wheel. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand," she said. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just stuck. I stand on that highway every night. And every night, people drive past me. For 3 years, I've been trying to get home. But I never can." 10 miles to Salem. Tears were streaming down David's face now. He didn't understand what was happening. This couldn't be real. But it was. He knew it was. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," she said. "Just remember me. Remember that I was real. That I had a life. A family. People who loved me." 5 miles to Salem. The lights of the city were starting to appear on the horizon. David had never been so relieved to see civilization in his life. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rebecca," she said. "Rebecca Chen. 2 miles to Salem." "I need you to do something for me, David," Rebecca said. "Tell my parents what happened tonight. Tell them I'm sorry I never made it home." "How do I find them?" David asked. "You'll figure it out," she said. 1 mile to Salem. As David took the first exit into the city, he felt the temperature in the car suddenly return to normal. He glanced over at the passenger seat. It was empty. Rebecca was gone. The seat was dry. There was no sign she had ever been there at all. David pulled into a gas station parking lot and sat there for 20 minutes, trying to process what had happened. Part of him wanted to believe he'd hallucinated the whole thing, that the stress and the late hour had played tricks on his mind. But he knew better. The next day, David did an internet search for Rebecca Chen. He found the article almost immediately. Local woman, age 23, killed in single vehicle accident on Interstate 5. Date of death, October 28, 3 years ago. The article included a photo. It was her. The woman from his car. David found her parents' address through the obituary. He drove to their house, not knowing what he would say. How do you tell someone their dead daughter hitchhiked in your car? When Rebecca's mother answered the door, David saw the recognition in her eyes before he even spoke. "You saw her," she said simply. "You saw Becca." David nodded, unable to speak. "You're not the first," Rebecca's mother said, tears in her eyes. "Every year, around the anniversary of her death, someone comes to our door. Someone who picked up a girl on the highway. Someone who gave her a ride toward home." They talked for over an hour. Rebecca's mother told him that her daughter had been driving home to surprise them for her birthday. She never made it. They'd been waiting for her that night, a cake on the table, presents wrapped. The police called just after midnight. "She was always too kind for her own good," her mother said. "Always helping people. Always stopping for anyone who needed it. I think that's why she's still out there. Still trying to get home." David left the Chen house feeling hollow. He still doesn't fully understand what happened that night. But he knows it was real. He knows Rebecca was real. And sometimes, on rainy October nights, David finds himself wondering if she's still out there. Still standing on the side of the highway. Still waiting for someone kind enough to stop. Still trying to make it home. Which story scared you the most? Was it Sarah and the car that followed her? Mike and whatever was in that rest stop bathroom? Or David and his ghostly passenger? Comment below and let me know. And if you've ever experienced something terrifying on the highway, something you can't explain, share your story. I read every comment. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I post new true horror stories every week. Stay safe out there. And remember, the highway might seem empty, but you're never really alone. Until next time.